You're listening to the Armchair Cricket Podcast.
Hello, all. Welcome to another episode of Armchair Cricket Podcast, a podcast focusing on Test cricket by armchair critics of the game. I'm your host, Ajit. Today, I have a frequent guest on the podcast, Chetan, joining us from Bangalore. Hello, Chetan. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, and I convey my regards to all the listeners.
Thanks a lot. That's very nice. My other regular co-host, Giri, has been held back due to some work, so he will not be joining us. So it'll just be the two of us today.
Okay?
How are things during this corona crisis in Bangalore, Chetan?
Things are very much coming to control, and the decisions taken by the central government is being followed here in Karnataka. Overall, in the south of India, it is quite good, and we hope for some good news in a month's time.
Indeed. It's time to be a bit careful, and of course, to safeguard ourselves against any unnecessary travel, unnecessary risks. And this time will pass. So we just stay brave.
Yes.
I'm sure all our listeners are also being very cautious, right? And as I said, in the Netherlands, things are slightly in a better state than it was, let's say, 10 days ago. So over the last 5 to 6 days, we have noticed that the number of new infections every day being reported is dropping. It is well under 1,000, and it was just 500 odd today. And a number of deaths is also dropping. So it's really encouraging. So as I said, we keep our chins up, we keep fighting, and we'll see how things go.
Yes, that's good news to hear, Ajit. Actually, worldwide, it has to come down, and people have to come back to normal as soon as possible.
Indeed. Let's get started with talking about cricket. And unfortunately, like the rest of our lives, Corona has taken over here as well. What is this news, Chetan? I hear the 100 might be postponed.
Yes, the 100 might be postponed, and it is more likely to be held in the 2021, that is a year later, as the ECB is more keen to please the broadcasters of the international series.
Right.
That was the main reason.
It looks like it was going to be a loss-making enterprise for the first couple of years at least. They had predicted as much as first 5 seasons would still be running in loss. Yeah, it is not a big number if you think in terms of how big ECB is. A loss of 5 to 6 million they can probably take, but over 5 years that's a big number to add up. But also, given that their entire international summer might be wiped out, and I remember the chief executive of ECB coming out with a statement something like 300 million is the loss they are expecting.
Yes, and they have high quality contests which are lined up like West Indies, Australia, and Pakistan.
Well, I mean, not only that, the county championship, the T20 Blast, all of these is also, they were always big crowd attractors. And these things, we don't know if they'll entirely be cancelled. That's a likelihood. But also, if you think about, at least they might be shortened. That means the earnings will not be the same.
Definitely. The earnings are definitely not going to be the same because this uncertainty has really given not only the cricket fraternity, but all the sports, music, and everything all around the world. They don't know when to start and what scale they have to start.
Indeed. Before I come to me and the cricket coverage in the Netherlands, well, you yourself are a tennis coach, aren't you? So how are things for you as an entrepreneur working for yourself?
It's obviously not very good, and especially when it comes to the summer, that is when there is a real demand for the tennis coaching or any kind of coaching for that matter, indoor or outdoor. But now, since it's also related to the children, it will take some time for us to get back to normal. Might be as late as even September, October.
Right. That means probably your most, let's say, your most busy time of the year would be spent on the sidelines this year.
Yes, that's definitely one of the things. As a break, it is something which is okay for me since I was doing all these years 7 days a week. But again, the reason for the break is not so good for the entire globe.
I do agree. Well, I'm sure the people at home would be very happy that you are staying back. But yeah, maybe it's also a hit on your pocket, right? Because it's the summer season is when you are at your busiest and also in most demand. But that's okay. I think we have to wait this one summer out for the better of all of our fellow people as well, and for ourselves, that we wait the summer out and we'll pick up the pieces as they lay later on, right?
Yes, because after working 15 summers, I think one summers for the sake of the health of the people is not too much of an ask, I would say.
Wow. That's quite some dedication, Chetan, to work 15 summers in a row.
One thing which happens for me in the summer is that I don't work in the weekends. So that's a good thing, as against all 7 days from June to March. It also helps that I am doing what I like. So I don't really look forward to a break.
Wonderful. Indeed. They say it's never work if you love what you're doing, isn't it?
Yes.
If I were to talk about the Netherlands, we still are waiting for the guidelines from KNCB, the controlling body for cricket in the Netherlands. We don't know when the summer season will exactly begin. So they have released some guidelines saying children's cricket can begin from 29th of this month, April. That's already a good news, and that's already an indicator as to when we might hear a bit more about it and when the real sport can begin. At least the adult sport, the women's cricket, everything. So it's not just cricket, by the way. Every sport is hit just as any other country here in the Netherlands as well. And look, that means, when we look at the international season for Netherlands, so Pakistan were scheduled to tour Netherlands before they went to UK, right? So this 3-match ODI series has been called off. So this is going to be a really big attraction. It was going to be on 4th,
Yes.
7th and 9th of July. And well, it was held in my hometown. So I was really looking forward to maybe even going to one, maybe if not two ODIs. It's usually I know this stadium and it's very intimate. So I have had a chance to watch some South African, some Afghani, some Sri Lankan cricketers from really up close, as in literally 10 feet away, 15 feet away. Because if we don't bother them, nobody bothers us. And we quietly just take a look. So I was really looking forward to, maybe watching, maybe getting autograph from some players. But I think this is not going to happen this season. And maybe I was even thinking if I get a chance, if I could volunteer to score. But yeah, all of those is not going to come to pass, looks like, this summer. Given the bigger picture, it's all right. But for us who are in the Netherlands and are waiting to see international cricket here, it's a bit of a disappointment. It's okay, I think, Chetan.
As a break, and the reason for the break definitely calls for strict measures as taken by all the authorized sporting boards across the globe. But where this will leave an impact is whatever the small earnings that the Netherlands Cricket Board could get, as well as their practice or their exposure to the big boys when it comes to qualification for quadrennial events like the T20 World Cup or even the 50-over World Cup. Whenever they're going to play that, such games would have added valuable experience for them to look forward to.
No, that is indeed very important, international exposure that they get. They're also a highly ranked team in ODIs, so I think they're in the top 15 in the world. So that would have been very good for them. But it's very unfortunate that they are unable to really get this opportunity. But yes, I mean, it has been indefinitely postponed simply because there is no other available window, I guess, in the international cricket calendar in the next 12 months or so. But I'm really hoping Pakistan and even other teams are able to tour Netherlands shortly once all of this crisis blows over. Right. Well, we were talking of ECB, how, many counties are tightening their belts. So it looks like, Yorkshire have released Ashwin from India, Keshav Maharaj from South Africa, and Nicholas Puran, who are supposed to be the overseas players, right? So
Yes.
Again, people who probably get to, represent their country in only one format, just like Cheteshwar Pujara, previously we've spoken in the previous episode as well. Ashwin also these days is mostly a test match specialist. So yeah, he'll probably very much miss this opportunity to come to England and, let's say get a better, control of his own skill, if anything. This is, literally on the cusp of 400 test wickets, but you can still say this guy can still, get to the next level always, right?
Yes. When we talk of Keshav Maharaj, last time he toured England, he had a good time with the South African team. He also picked up one or two fourfers,
Right.
if I am right. And when it comes to Ashwin, I think for him to better whatever he has got, I think the time is already gone. So if you are looking at 365, 370 test wickets,
Mm-hmm.
out of which 314 have come in subcontinent and West Indies.
Right.
And also his runs are mostly against West Indies, Sri Lanka, or in subcontinental conditions.
Indeed. Indeed.
So really, the way Ravindra Jadeja has progressed over the last 3 years with bat and ball in the SENA countries, that is South Africa, England, New Zealand, and Australia, looking at Ashwin in the future for overseas trips, whatever he does in the county, he can make a case. But again, I don't think his time for learning is still there. I think he has well past it.
Look, I would not think like that, simply because yes, of course, you're right, and he's had a long career, and we do see that most of his wickets and runs have been in subcontinent or subcontinental conditions, right? But he's 33 and he has this huge career behind him already, and that doesn't mean the learning stops. And more importantly, look, you have to be really careful while leaving 360 wickets on the bench, even in foreign conditions or even in conditions that are. So in the last tour of Australia, he was a much better bowler compared to previous year, right? I don't have all the stats handy, but at least I remember in England, he was unfortunately bowled into the ground, I thought, in the second test, but he couldn't win that test. So that I'll accept, right? That probably made a big difference to the Indian rest of the test tour in that tour. But in Australia, I think he was much improved. I somehow see him finishing with 500 test wickets. He has enough number of years of cricket left. This is my opinion. But I still say there is a chance he can get to, play 4 to 5 years of cricket, and that means at least 2 to 3, if not 4 overseas tours, and he can still make it count.
Yes, he can always do that. See, the problem with him is it's not about the stopping of the learning process. That never stops. But again, the problem with his bowling action, especially being a finger spinner, there is not enough body in the action to impart the revolutions required to be a match winner in overseas conditions.
Right.
So that basic fundamental mistake of reaction is already there, which really hasn't been corrected. And also IPL has played a crucial role in Ashwin, as in the moment he gets hit for 1 or 2 sixes with a flighted ball, he goes back to delivering flat for the next 5-6 overs. That really doesn't pay dividends in the test format or in even the ODI format.
I do recognize where you're coming from. That maybe his involvement in the shorter formats at the IPL and other levels could probably hold him back as a spinner purely in the test arena. See, there have been some spinners who have been successful in multiple formats, but if you look at in the recent times, you have Graeme Swann, who was primarily a test match bowler. Again, Nathan Lyon, primarily a test match bowler, and probably I think I can comfortably say the best off spinner out there in the cricket world right now is Nathan Lyon, and he usually leads Australia to victory abroad. It's very important, right? So I can definitely agree. At least that part I can see it coming. But I still, I'm a fan of Ashwin myself, and I'm really hoping he's able to come through, right? So that's Ashwin. But how about Nicholas Pooran? Do you think he would have had a good opportunity to be playing in the county season? Do you see big things for Nicholas Pooran as far as West Indian colours go?
Yes, his performance during the last year's World Cup in England was extremely encouraging. He also scored a century in the same English conditions, and he is a boy with tremendous hand-eye coordination.
Right.
We also saw that in India and Bangladesh. And being so young, for him, the part of learning in the English county, more from the game, as we have seen our legends of the past comment, the way they have to take care of things apart from cricket in England was what made them mentally stronger, not just the game. So that is going to help Nicholas Pooran utilize his potential and reach his true potential at the international level.
Would you elaborate? Maybe you said some legend of the game had this as an example. Can you maybe elaborate a bit more on that story?
It goes on. It's not one person. It goes on from Viv Richards to Wasim Akram to Tendulkar to Dravid to Javagal Srinath.
Interesting.
All of them have told that staying away from home and looking after the course, what is usually taken care by somebody else when they are at home, they have to take care of themselves and still prepare for the match. That has definitely helped them become mentally stronger and utilize their time and money better.
Well, are you telling me becoming a bit more responsible for yourself, becoming a more rounded individual would make you a better cricketer?
Definitely. I think that answers the question for not only cricket, I would say for all sports. If you look at it, all the major sports, if you look at the involvement of the family, it is more in Asia that the families are heavily involved with the kids and teenagers, and even until they get their job, and even after they get their job. If you look at the West, they are a little more independent, and I think to a great extent it does justify that in the Olympics medal tally.
Very interesting, extremely interesting. But I think this is a topic for another day where we will just discuss this. So, but I think I'll invite you for a special episode, Chetan, where we will discuss just this, right?
Sure.
I think because you interact with kids as a coach on a day-to-day basis, you probably see this in a much more evident manner than for somebody who doesn't do that. But that's fantastic to hear. I will want to definitely hear this perspective. Nicholas Pooran, I think at 24, showing what he has shown in the 25 odd ODIs that he has played, I think, yeah, if nurtured right and if given the right opportunity, he has a 10-year test career as far as West Indies is concerned. And at least a 10-year career if he doesn't get distracted by the, let's say, the riches that shorter format league has to offer. I really see him because he's also a keeper. Yeah, I really hope he can fulfill his potential there, Chetan.
Definitely. He is really one of the biggest talents in West Indies cricket to crop up after Shimron Hetmeyer. They both, along with Hope, would be the ones who would lead the West Indies for a decade or more. Because Hope has already shown what he has shown in the Headingley Test, where he got those twin hundreds to single-handedly almost defeat England. And that was a feat which was not done at Headingley at all in almost 150 years of its first-class cricket.
Right. Indeed. That was really special. That match I remember as well. So we hope, if not here, they get the same learnings, all three elsewhere, and they're able to move on, right? And go on to greater things, whether we agree or not about Ashwin. Time will tell, right? So, Abu Dhabi cricket is set to offer its services to England cricket, that is ECB, as one of the alternative venues because of the COVID-19 setup. UAE is really considering offering its services just like how it does for Pakistan as one of the international venues for England cricket. But, England cricket doesn't seem to be really interested because of the associated costs, right? But do you think this might be something that we might witness, where we might have some neutral venues where countries who are not ready or who are unable to play on their home country soil after COVID-19 or as a result of COVID-19 would probably go and play in a neutral place, Malaysia, Abu Dhabi, so on?
Yes, that's definitely an option to look into. It is definitely better than not playing, I would say, in that way. And especially the UAE, Abu Dhabi, whatever you have said, they have offered from October to January, where the cricket is not possible in the UK at that time because of the winter.
Agreed.
So in that case, so whatever they have lost for the COVID, they would definitely have to spend something on UAE cricket, definitely. But again, they could salvage something. That's what I would say. And it would be much better exposure for their county cricketers or the youngsters who are not yet into the international circuit.
Interesting. it's not completely beyond, let's say, no, it's not completely beyond the chances of an English cricket season being played from October to January in a neutral place. That sounds very interesting, but I think the logistical costs are huge, and maybe there'll have to be TV deals signed just to make this happen. And there are some logistics to be worked out, I'm sure, but it sounds very tantalizing. I'm waiting as to how this news story develops. I don't have a whole lot of hope, but it will be great if what you said comes true, and if we are able to see that. Now,
Yes.
moving forward, well, did you see Gale's rant about Sarwan? Did you see this? He called him a couple of
Yes.
interesting names.
Yeah, I mean, see, that is something I think for the career that Gale has had, which is more than 1.5 decades of international cricket, that could have been kept private. I think I don't know whether the COVID-19 and all the frustrations of the leagues being cancelled has seen him do like this. But again, as we all say, dirty linen should be washed inside, not in the public. I think Gale should have taught it along those lines.
Indeed. Look, if nothing, this sort of an outburst against somebody who's still involved with the WICB setup, right, Sarwan, will mean that WICB will also cast an eye. Maybe there may be some disciplining that might happen, because I think if I look at the story, it looks like Ram Naresh Sarwan was the assistant coach in Jamaica Talavas, where Gale was the captain last year, and also their second highest scorer, if I'm not wrong. But they finished last in the league, right? So basically, it was about retaining Gale for this season, right? This the CPL T20 league this
Yes.
season. So unfortunately, it looks like they kept him in the dark until the last minute, and he thought he'll not get a team, and finally he got it. And I think they left it really late. If March end, he got to know on 27th March or some such. So he does feel hard done by, right? But indeed, I agree with you that this is not the way to probably reveal these things. He's revealed a lot of, let's say, not only personal interactions between him and Sarwan, but also some behind the scenes how things are done. In those things should definitely be kept. And at a professional level, you shouldn't be talking about those, I guess. But yeah, as you said, maybe it's a bit of frustration being cooped up at home. I can imagine if I'm feeling so frustrated at home, how a party boy like Chris Gale must be feeling, right?
Yes, he's usually a free-flowing batsman and a free-flowing person. So that would definitely have added to the frustration. And also, if whatever he has said, if you look into it, that Sarwan was acting like a boss everywhere, and he was like the owner's pet or something like that. No, that should have caused some frustration or agitation, because Gale has played T20 cricket successfully in over 7 to 8 leagues across the world.
Right. Well, I mean, be what it may, it was a bit of an unfortunate thing as far as I'm concerned. But I hope they're able to patch differences. It looks like both of them have a lot to contribute to West Indian cricket, right, in the upcoming years. So whether they patch differences, that would be the best scenario. But at least if they can avoid each other's path, if they cannot patch up differences, it is fine. Right? In cricket, there are these famed rivalries. And they say if you leave Ian Chappell and Sir Ian Botham in the same room, they'll probably still punch each other out. So this is a rivalry going on for 35, 40 years. So sometimes, these rivalries persist. So, but nonetheless, they're somehow kept apart. So maybe this is what needs to happen if they cannot really make up.
Yes.
Let's go further then. Sana Mir, who's probably the most successful women's cricketer to ever come out of Pakistan, has decided to call it quits in the international cricket. So she's been in and out of the Pakistani team since last November, and basically she's not played much since then. And well, if you look at her record, she's had a wonderful record and a 15-year career. So taking 151 wickets at an average of 24.27 in just 120 ODIs, 89 wickets in 106 T20I, apart from some batting as well. So she would be considered a bowling all-rounder who bats at number 7 or 8. But she's done a wonderful service to her country, and we would wish her all the best going forward.
Yes, definitely. When a cricket setup, especially like those of Pakistan, West Indies, and Sri Lanka, the way they handle their players, when they lose an experienced player like this, it is a big jolt to the board as well as to the team.
Yeah.
These are the people who are capable of, mentoring youngsters
Mm, mm, mm.
and guide them in the right direction.
Yeah, indeed. Now, I really hope, the experience that she has and the, let's say, her learnings that she was able to take for herself from international cricket are transferred to the next generation. Maybe there is a bit of, maybe she's a bit miffed in the way she was treated or something, but I hope they're able to bury this and, she's able to actually come back into the fold as a coach, as a mentor, as you said, Chetan.
Yes, passing on in a different capacity, like Misbah ul Haq, they have put him as a coach now for the men's team.
Mm-hmm.
And Inzamam was the chairman of selectors for some time.
Yeah.
And there have been some good selections of late, like Fakhar Zaman, Rizwan, the keeper,
Indeed.
and of course Muhammad Amir and others have been there for almost close to a decade. So a good blend of youth and experience will certainly do, and that only happens when not only during their playing time, but the experienced players give it back after their playing time, that is after their retirement, in a different capacity.
I agree totally. And sometimes it does feel that some of the talent that's available in especially some of the countries you did mention is left underutilized because of one reason or the other, right? And yeah, maybe this is something that to be improved indeed. Umar Akmal, the bête noire of, I dare say the bête noire of Pakistan cricket. It looks like he's finally met his match. He's been banned for 3 years from all cricket, Chetan. I don't know if you followed this news.
Yes, definitely. Because Umar Akmal, when we remember 6 to 7 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
if he would have got his bearings right mentally, would have been in the league of Kane Williamson, Virat Kohli, and others, and Joe Root, I would say.
Yeah.
But he has had a series of problems, personal and with the board, which has led to this. And unfortunately, it took away a great talent from international cricket, I would say.
Well, I would not write him off already, but at 29, if you're going to lose 3 years of your cricket, it does take a lot for you to come back. I'm sure at 33, you're not the same person you were when you're at 23 or 27 or 29. This is indeed one of those sad stories again to read, and we are really hoping, if there's a lesson to be learned here, he gets through that. Because look, what we heard was a bit unfortunate, because the attorney from PCB, the person who handles all the legal matters within PCB, he's called Tafazul Rizvi. And it looks like Akmal came into the hearing with the disciplinary panel without a lawyer. And he tried to explain away the things. Instead of admitting culpability and showing contrition, he sort of tried to explain it away through situation and through circumstance. So
yes,
that's unfortunate. So that's one of the things Mr. Rizvi said in the press conference after. And he said his lack of contrition and lack of remorse was the thing that made them slap the book down on him, right? So if you can previously remember, look, he's been accused of not actually reporting approaches, and there are two separate instances of this, right? But there have been other cricketers who have been faced with such situations, especially in Pakistan. And I think Mohammad Irfan, the tall fast bowler, right? He was in a similar situation and he got a 6-month ban, more or less in a similar situation. Let me put it like that. Not exactly the same, but apparently he showed some contrition and he agreed that there was a mistake from his side and there was something he could learn. And that is important, right? So Umar Akmal is a well publicized bad boy, if I may say this, and apparently he doesn't want to learn. So in this ESPN Cricinfo article, they've put up his charge sheet, or whatever you may call it, with all the list of misdemeanors that he's been accused of over the last, almost 7 to 8 years, even 10 years going back all the way. And it reads as a very unfortunate tale. As you said, this guy, with the talent he currently has, he could have had 5,000 test runs and maybe 8,000 one-day runs at this point in time. And who knows, he could have been the captain of Pakistan. He could have been their best batsman right now.
Yes, definitely. He could have been the way the Pakistan are talking now about Babar Azam.
Mm-hmm.
They could have probably talked of Umar Akmal if he was consistent and regular and mentally mature. Probably 3-4 years back, he could have been the best batsman in the side.
Yeah, but okay, ifs and buts, right? we will leave it at that, and we hope Umar Akmal, the Umar Akmal who comes back, is a slightly more mature individual, and has all these rough edges rounded off, but he still has the fire in his belly, and he's able to still make a small mark with whatever time that is left to him in the international arena. Going forward, J. Arun Kumar, the former Karnataka opening batsman, has been appointed as the USA men's cricket coach. Chetan, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I mean, I would also like to say that this is not the first tryst of a Karnataka cricketer with the USA men's team. I think Sunil Joshi was the consultant a few years back, as he used to spend a lot of time in California after his playing days.
He was one of the persons who lost out when Arun Kumar's contract was made. It looks like they decided to not renew Kiran More, Sunil Joshi, and Praveen Amre's contracts.
Yeah, but again, if you see, Sunil Joshi now is the chairman of selectors for BCCI.
Indeed.
So that's definitely a better, bigger job and closer to his house, I would say.
Indeed.
At the same time, I remember J.N. Kumar in the mid-90s. I used to visit the stadium for some Ranji matches as well, the M. Chinnaswamy Stadium. And I was feeling he was very unlucky not to get a nod in the Indian lineup, as they were struggling for openers during the end of Navjot Singh Sidhu's career.
Indeed. I think he was a bit unlucky to not have gotten a couple of matches and maybe given a chance to prove himself. But I think he was always really good, very prolific in Karnataka colours. But when he had a chance to play for, the mixed teams like zonal teams or, India A, India B, he somehow lost out. This was my memory of Arun Kumar. And there he lost the chance to get to the next level, race to the next level.
Yes, that one you're spot on there actually. Where the national selectors were looking up the zonal matches, the challenger trophies, that's where he lost out. In fact, another person from Karnataka with not so good temper, Tilak Naidu, was faring much better in those championships. But he probably lost out because of his temper.
Somebody who's not easy to handle, just like an Umar Akmal, maybe.
Yes.
All right. That's unfortunate to hear, because I can't claim to know Tilak Naidu personally, but we have common friends, and I hear a lot about him, or I used to hear a lot about him. This was already 20 years ago. But yeah, okay, that was something I was not aware of, and it's unfortunate. All right. Going further, it looks like Kane Williamson and Sophie Devine, Susie Bates and Ross Taylor have won big in the New Zealand's Limited Overs International Cricketer Awards, the yearly Cricketer Awards New Zealand Cricket provide.
Yes, of course. All these four names, as you speak, have been exceptional in the international as well as in the domestic setup. Especially when we talk of somebody like Kane Williamson, he has basically nothing to prove. He's counted among the top 4 batsmen across formats in the world right now. With his calm head. Ross Taylor has been, of course, he has had, I would say, 3-4 phases in his career. After his eye surgery, he's been much better.
Indeed. So I think the eye surgery made such a difference. He came out and whacked a 290, right? And
that was against Australia.
Yeah, that too in Australia.
That was against Australia in Perth or Melbourne.
It's in Melbourne, I remember. But okay, maybe there's a bit of muddling. But yeah, that's indeed Ross Taylor and Ken Williamson when it comes to men, and of course Susie Bates and Sophie Devine, right? Susie Bates is an established champion of New Zealand women's cricket, but Sophie Devine is the next big thing, they say.
Yes, because what they are unique about these women are they are big hitters, and there are a lack of big hitters in women's international cricket. Apart from countries like Australia and New Zealand, England had a few very good and have a few very good technically sound batsmen like Sarah Taylor.
Yeah.
But Sophie Devine and Susie Bates are dangerous batsmen. They're almost like very consistent pinch hitters who have done well in the quadrennial events like the T20 World Cup and the 50-over World Cup.
Indeed. So yeah, we will keep an eye out and take a look at these people and these two cricketers especially. In a bit of very heartening news, we had spoken about Colonel Tom Moore also in the last episode. I think we called him Captain Tom Moore, so we are sorry about that, but he's Colonel Tom Moore, and this is the 100-year-old UK war veteran who's raised more than 30 million pounds for fighting COVID-19. So he's been given another honor. On his 100th birthday, he's been presented with an England cricket cap.
That I would say is an extremely good token of appreciation, especially for a war veteran, and his speaks about volumes about his unending desire to contribute to the cause of England as a whole.
Indeed.
And an English cap would definitely be a very deserving honor.
Because look, I mean, for somebody who started out to probably raise 1,000 pounds, and where he is today, at 100-year-old, he probably, this guy is definitely a great inspiration for all of us. Age no bar.
Yes, it's definitely a case in point to look at. I would say possibly some. If we look at another colonel who started the KFC, I think he was 65 or so when he started the KFC.
Right.
And of course, that supported more for his family and his own personal business. But what this person has done is really for more the whole of England, as I said. So it's a more better contribution to the country.
All right. Yeah, but that's a real silver lining when it comes to, we talk a lot of doom and gloom about COVID, but this person's efforts and his enthusiasm is a real silver lining in these trying times, Chetan.
Definitely, and the people across the world can really look at it and get inspired to get away from this virus as soon as possible, and life can return to normal.
Indeed, and maybe add a little bit in the form of contributions ourselves, be it through action or be it through, just donations. So that's a really nice thing. In the last news for today, Shakib's corruptor. So a businessman who approached Shakib, and then due to him, Shakib got banned for a year. So his name is Anil Agarwal. And this businessman, Deepak Agarwal,
Deepak, yes.
Yeah, indeed. He has been banned for 2 years by ICC in getting involved in any way with cricket. It's a long list of things and how things transpired between Shakib and Mr. Agarwal, but we'll probably not go into that. It's interesting because there is a T10 cricket league that happens, right? So he was trying to become a team owner in one of these league teams.
Yeah, I mean, such people always look at a more prospects of doing such things. Owning a team would definitely provide him with a perfect platform.
It looks like, as soon as he became an owner, he tried to make an approach, and then they had to confiscate his phone, and then they had to, as they say, chase him out of there, and so on and so on. But an interesting past, and if anybody's interested, I would definitely recommend reading this article. But also it gives you an idea of why Shakib probably felt unsafe, talking about these approaches. So it's a longer discussion, but yeah, indeed, this corruptor has been brought to the book, as they say, and let's hope he's not really involved in cricket in the upcoming years, not even beyond 2. If we look at the trivia section, so which player holds the record for the most number of pairs in Test cricket was the trivia question from the previous episode. So Chetan, can you guess who this player is?
Chris Martin?
Exactly. I knew you would be able to guess it in the first go. It is Chris Martin who leads the list of, let's say, famous batsmen who have a lot of pairs, right? So Chris Martin leads the list with 9 pairs, right? You have Bhagwat Chandrasekhar, Muthaiya Muralidharan. So sorry, Chris Martin has 7. I'm sorry, but he's comfortably ahead. So he's 3 ahead from Bhagwat Chandrasekhar, Muthaiya Muralidharan, Mervyn Dillon, and Courtney Walsh. Can you guess the only other batsman who has 4 pairs, Chetan?
Shahid Afridi?
That would have been a good guess, but no. I'll give you another clue. This guy made 2 pairs in his first 3 tests or first 4 tests, but he still went on to have a very successful career as a batsman as well as a captain of his country.
Marwan Attapattu?
Indeed. I knew you would be able to guess as soon as I said that. So it's Marwan Attapattu, who's sort of, he's the only batsman on this list, on this air quotes inglorious list, if I may say. So Chris Martin has 7, then you have 5 people with 4, and then usual suspects. You have Glenn McGrath, Curtly Ambrose, and there is Andrew Flintoff at the end of it all, who has two. So it's a very interesting list if you were to just go down this list. The trivia question from this episode is: so which England cricketer played only one international game in his career but took 3,278 first class wickets? This is a very interesting cricketer, and we'll discuss more about him in the upcoming episode, I'm sure. But what a career he would have had if he had a chance to play international cricket. One could think, but those were different times.
Yeah,
I've given enough hints there. There has been some articles about him recently in certain publications. So if you've read about him, you know who he is. So Chetan, I think you can tell me who he is off air. I think you know it, right?
I will try to think.
All right. So our listeners could get in touch with us to let us know the answer to this trivia question, or to let us know how our podcast is going. If they have any suggestions, we are always welcome. If you would like to, guest star on this podcast, do write into us. That's possible. All of these are possible. Either you can contact us on Twitter at armchaircricketpod, or write into us at armchair.cricket@gmail.com, or you could leave it as a comment in one of the apps. We have a lot of apps where you could try and listen to our podcast. Basically any broadcasting app out there, right? And then please don't forget to leave a review and a comment for us in iTunes store or Apple Podcast. It really helps us. So having said all this, I would like to first say thanks to Chetan for a wonderful guest appearance. It's always a pleasure to host you, Chetan.
Thank you, Ajit, and it's always my pleasure to come to this program, because my two favorite games in my life have been tennis and cricket, and tennis I have been doing something in the form of coaching, but cricket, I think this is the perfect platform for me to do something meaningful.
Lovely to hear that. All right then, thanks a lot. Goodbye.
You're listening to the Armchair Cricket Podcast.